short while ago I did a review of Mega Man 9, which I thought was one of the best games in the entire series. Before that, the Mega Man series had been declining. The later Mega Man games in the X series on PlayStation 2 were awful, but then came along Mega Man 9. It rocked the world and brought the series back to its roots. Finally, a few years later came the 10th installment of the 8-bit Mega Man series, Mega Man 10. Now for newcomers, this has nothing to do with Mega Man X, even though X in Roman numerals means 10. Yeah, it's confusing, but to keep it simple, we're talking about the 10th game of the classic series here. Mega Man 10 came out as a downloadable title on the WiiWare, PSN, and Xbox Live Arcade back in 2010. You know, I really wish they'd release these games on actual discs with packaging. There's just something lacking not being able to have physical copies of the game. Sure, Mega Man 9 was great, but I don't have a copy of it sitting on my shelf. I can't point over to it to my friends and say that I beat it. Nope, it's just stored on some file that I have to dig up. Sure, there's a positive aspect to that. Digital downloads don't take up any shelf space, but not having a physical copy just takes part of the fun out of it. So no matter how good they make these modern games, it'll never be quite as good as it was in the old days, as long as my game is in digital limbo and not on my shelf. Anyway, let's take a look at what Mega Man 10 had to offer. First, the plot. This time around, a virus has been infecting robots in a worldwide epidemic. The virus is causing all the robots around the globe to shut down, and it says that the humans can't get along without them. I can't help but sense a little bit of social commentary there. The evil Dr. Wily comes to ask the good Dr. Light for help because the robots went crazy on him. Surprisingly, he offers to help find a cure, but it's pretty obvious that he's full of crap. It's all really cliche, but who cares? The plot was never really what mattered in the 8-bit Mega Man titles. So let's talk about the gameplay. It's classic Mega Man formula all the way here. As with all the other games, you fight 8 robot masters, and each one of them is vulnerable to a specific weapon. So choosing your order carefully is a must, as always. Once again, they kept it to just the classic Mega Buster with no option for a charge shot, which personally I prefer. I'm not gonna lie though, on my first playthrough using Mega Man, I thought it was pretty bland. There was very few new surprises, and overall I was disappointed because I know it can be so much better. There's some big positives in this game and some big negatives, leaving the player with an overall mediocre experience. Now, a few of the stages are really cool. My favorite stage is Sheep Man's stage that has disappearing colored blocks that look like Legos. You step on them for a second and they'll disappear, dropping you down to the next color. And you have to be careful because there's spikes built in that'll kill you. This was something new that I hadn't seen in any previous Mega Man games, and I thought it was pretty clever. I also enjoyed the first Wily stage. This one has you revisiting old boss fights from the early Mega Man NES games. You don't fight the bosses themselves, they're on a display screen, and you have to fight against their weapons. It's a Mega Man tradition to bring back old bosses, and perhaps a cliché, but I'm happy that they did. These archive boss fights on the Wily first stage were the only time that I struggled during the game, because there's 3 different weapons to fight, and you have to quickly figure out which of your items is best suited to use against them. So I liked all that, but sadly, those were the only levels that I really cared for. The speeding trucks on Nitro Man stage were lame, just trucks zooming by and you jump over them. Really? Just trucks going by? A 2-year-old could have thought of that. Mega Man's world is capable of a lot more than that. I've seen it before, so that's a real turn-off. At the very least, they threw in an occasional mini-boss fight to spice it up, but those are also kinda lame. There's a castle on Blade Man stage, but you just jump up and shoot the towers. It's no thought required. Now, as for the robot masters themselves, most of them are uninspired or are just too similar to past bosses. For example, Chill Man. How many times is there going to be an ice-themed robot master? There's already been Iceman, Blizzard Man, Freeze Man, Frost Man. I mean, come on. This is what I mean by uninspired. I've heard people say that they just can't put their finger on why Mega Man 9 was better than 10, but I think that this is a big reason right here. They need to just stop making new robot masters so similar to the old ones. We don't need any more that are based on fire, ice, wood, or water, that's for sure. One of the main things that makes the Mega Man games great are the weapons that you get. Metal Blade has to be the best example because with that, you could kill everything and shoot in every direction. It was practically game-breaking, but it was so awesome. The last game, Mega Man 9, also had some really superb weapons like the Gravity Bomb and the Tornado Blow. But this game leaves you totally unfulfilled in the weapons department. There's Solar Man's weapon, which seems like it's cool at first, but it has a delay before it fires, which leaves you hanging, and it's aggravating. The worst weapon, though, is the one that you get from Sheep Man. You shoot out this crappy cloud, and if it hits something before reaching the top of the screen, nothing even happens, and it's wasted. Then if it actually does get to the top, an enemy needs to be moving towards it to even get hit. If the enemy is stationary, again, it's useless. There are a few weapons that I think are decent. Water Shield is effective because it can protect you from getting hit. The one problem though, it's really just a copy of Woodman's weapon from Mega Man 2. But also I like the Triple Blade and the Wheel Cutter, those were okay. So the weapons are a mixed bag. Some are good and some stink. It just leaves me feeling less than impressed. They brought back the shop again like in Mega Man 9. It's a lot more user-friendly this time around, so that's a good improvement at least. Also, they added an item to the store that'll protect you against spikes. Usually spikes will kill you instantly, but this will let you hit them and only take minimal damage, but just once. It's useful if you're playing through the game on hard difficulty. Looking back, I still think Mega Man 2 was the best game of the entire series. But I have to ask myself, what sets Mega Man 2 apart from the other games that make it so much better? Yeah, the gameplay was awesome in Mega Man 2, but what else about the game made it so good? And the answer that I always come back to is the soundtrack. Mega Man 2 had some of the best, if not the best music on the NES. Each track in that game gets your blood pumping, but more than that, it was memorable. I find myself humming tunes to that game in real life to this day. No joke, it's some of the catchiest music that I've ever heard in my life. And that's something that Mega Man 10 is sorely lacking. To be fair, there were a few songs that were really good, like this one. But there's very few stages here with catchy music. If they ever do make another Mega Man game, they need to focus a lot more on the music aspect of it, because that's one of the main things that made the Mega Mans great in the first place. It can't just be one or two good tracks. All the tracks need to be memorable if it's ever going to match the greatness of the early games. So how about the challenge? If you remember, a lot of people complained about Mega Man 9 being too difficult. Well, for all those people, there's an option to set the game to easy. This puts platforms in certain spaces, making pits easier to avoid. I'm glad they have the option there for those that want it, but for me, it takes the challenge out of the game, making it pointless. Even playing through the game on normal, it's still a lot easier than Mega Man 9. So I recommend playing on hard, or at least using Proto Man since he takes double damage. Even still, the fact that you can just go and buy a bunch of E-Tanks at the store still takes a lot of the challenge out of it. The point is, I felt the game was just too easy in comparison with Part 9, but it is nice that the difficulty option's there for those that want it. Another minor nitpick is the blue borders on the sides of the screen. It's just a stationary picture, and I was worried about it burning an image into my TV's display if I left it on long enough. There's no need for the border things, just have it black. Another thing I have to say, at first, I loved being able to hit the triggers to cycle through the weapons. It's so much faster than having to go to the menu and choose your item one by one. That said, I had the tendency to sometimes hit the trigger by accident when playing. It's pretty easy for your finger to just slip onto that trigger button, and oftentimes I find myself switching to an unwanted weapon by mistake. So while cycling through the weapons seemed like a good idea at first, looking back, I prefer it the old way, because I never ended up getting hurt or dying in the old games because my finger slipped. Like before, you can play through the game with Proto Man. Using him gives the game a different feel and makes it worth playing through a second time, though I actually prefer him to begin with because he takes the double damage. Endless Attack is back again as a bonus, where you attempt to see how many screens you can clear without dying. This is like Mega Man if it was made into an arcade game, and I like it. There's lots of other extras as well, so there is replay value, even if the game is mediocre in most ways. This isn't a terrible game by any means. I think it was worth playing through at least once, but the sad fact is, the levels, the robot masters, and the music were mostly forgettable. Recently, it was announced that the Blue Bomber is geared up to be a playable character in Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U. Clearly, Mega Man is still just as popular as ever. Hopefully, Mega Man's appearance in Smash Bros. Will gain enough interest in the character again for them to consider making Mega Man 11. Even though Mega Man 10 had much to be desired, I know that there's more that can be done with this amazing franchise. As far as I'm concerned, they could keep making 8-bit Mega Man games forever, and I'd keep buying them, as long as the games have good music, inspired level design, and more unique bosses. So here's hoping the Blue Bomber returns to form one day, and we all get to play an awesome Mega Man 11.